Let's talk about money glitches for a second. So as HOA likes to say, there's the infinite money glitch. And that is true. There's always things happening in that community, and I'm a member of it. But I do want to talk about a money glitch that is unrelated, and it basically has zero risk. I was never going to talk about it. It's something I did long time ago. And then Pulseformer posted about it, and I replied. I was like, dude, why did you tell everybody this? I actually went into his spaces and asked him. I was like, this is such an awesome secret. Why share it? And of course, he's a good guy, better than me. He decided he's going to share it with everybody. So, whatever. But I'll explain how I figured this out. It actually happened years ago. So Gnosis XDAI, which used to be called XDAI Stake or whatever the network was called then. Right now it's being run by Gnosis. And they're an L2, and as a base layer, they use DAI. Because one of the problems with crypto is you have a base layer, like say ETH or Pulse, and then as the value of that thing goes up, so does the fees, and then the fees become ridiculous and the thing stops functioning and nobody wants to use it. So they came up with an L2 where the base token is DAI, so anytime you trade, everything's versus the US dollar essentially. And works great, never really caught on, but I think actually it's a really good idea. And so when the chain came out, you would have to bridge. They had a bridge where you would send DAI to it, and then it would mint you XDAI on that chain. And that's what you would use to transact and to pay fees. It's 1,000th of a cent to do a transaction on that chain. So with 1 penny, you would actually, be able to do a lot of transactions. And all the liquidity pairs on Honeyswap were, versus XDAI. And what had happened is like if you want a Chainlink, it was Chainlink versus XDAI. Whatever. Bitcoin, wrapped Bitcoin versus XDAI, ETH versus XDAI, and so on and so forth. And then one day I sent some hex to the chain, and then I was sending some other stuff. And now to send regular tokens, you had to use, and you still do, use Omni Bridge, which is the most reliable DeFi bridge that exists. And it's the one Pulsechain copied for, bridging to Pulsechain. It's just a copy of the Omni Bridge. Again, very reliable tech, smart people went into making this. And so I was copying, I was transferring coins to the XDAI chain, because back then I saw the bull run coming and I didn't want to be stuck not being able to trade and pay high Uniswap fees on ETH. And then, so I was just transferring things, sending them across the bridge for future trades that I wanted to do. And then I was like, well, I want some more DAI on that side, so I transferred some DAI. But I didn't send it through the protocol that mints XDAI. So when it appeared on the other side, it was DAI, it was wrapped DAI, but it wasn't the XDAI that I could natively spend on that chain. And then I thought, perhaps there's other people out there who are making the same mistake. And then, so I checked the liquidity pairs, and sure enough, there was a really tiny pool that somebody had made, and they had XDAI versus DAI. So essentially kind of like a curve thing. You're allowing up for swap two of the exact same friggin' asset. And so I just put my DAI into that pool with XDAI. So I had the DAI XDAI trading pair. And I was like, well, I'll watch it. Maybe there will be some fees. And I guess somebody, and I didn't do this with a very large amount, like we're just talking hundreds of dollars. I guess somebody bridged the wrong die, or like bridged about it the wrong way, and then they sold into that pool and like wickedly pushed the price against themselves. And this was V2 pool, and when they did that, I profited a huge amount, and then it slowly returned back to the 1-to-1 ratio, but I had a massive amount of fees. So I just brought more, and I made a giant liquidity pool, and then for like 2 or 3 years, I sat there harvesting fees on people trading die for die. And I was like, this is an awesome money glitch. However, that pool became so large over time from other people discovering this that eventually the percentage of the fees I got turned into nothingness, and then I was only making a few cents here and there. So eventually I just pulled my LP out of it and have nothing to do with that pair anymore. Now the same thing is true on Pulschain. So, Pulschain is a copy of the Ethereum system state, which means all the LPs and all the, not just Uniswap, but SushiSwap, all the other swaps, all the liquidity on 0x and Balancer and Curve and all the stuff in Maker vaults was all copied over. And there was a fixer bot that Richard used to fix a lot of the Uniswap pairs to whatever balance was deemed appropriate, by him, or however that was calculated. And then what that bot did was take a lot of these things and, switch it for Hex versus Pulse, and it switched them. But all the stuff that was never changed was copied. And see, on Ethereum, when you actually make a liquidity pair, you can't actually put ETH in it. The ETH has to get wrapped. And then, it does this behind the scenes when you add, say a Hex versus ETH pair on Ethereum. It just wraps the ETH for you. So it's truly wrapped ETH versus Hex. And now what ends up happening is all this stuff got copied over. Well, the fixer bot didn't change every single pairing to Pulse because some of the things it just too complicated or doesn't have the keys to do it in certain pairs or whatever. So when the system state was copied, there was a new token created by default called P wrapped ETH, Pulse wrapped ETH. And that by default, when you unwrap it, because it was a wrapped ETH, but we're no longer on ETH, when you run the code to unwrap it, it natively defaults into 1 pulse. So now pWeth is 1 pulse. And there's a lot of pairs hiding out there that don't even show on DexScreener. DexScreener only shows you things that were traded recently. And if you don't believe me, find a really odd pair, like something like Raiden or 0x Monero or something, just some strange ETH asset that was there at the fork. Look up the contract address, buy some on Petius, which will find the pair for you if there is liquidity out there in the darkness somewhere, and it will reactivate a pair. And normally this pair will be that item versus wrapped ETH, pWeth. Okay, and then when that happens, the price fluctuates, and then the ARB bots come in, and then they trade Pulse versus pWeth and try to extract their whatever 1/10 of a cent of value that they do on every trade. And the effect of this means that it exchanges the pWeth for Pulse, which is again a 1-to-1 asset. And it's easiest to do this in the pWeth Pulse pools, which there's some out there because people like me have contributed liquidity to these things. And when this happens, when these trades happen, we get the fees. And so essentially, when Pulse is traded for Pulse, there's a fee to be made on it. And these pools exist on PulseX, and you can go add liquidity. So you just need to buy pWeth, and you got to be careful on the contract address you're using. Make sure it's the legitimate one. Double check it on DexScreener. I'll probably put it at the bottom of the video here at some point, just so that you can make sure you're using the right contract address. But essentially, you buy the wrapped pulse, the pWeth, and you buy a bunch of it, and it pretty much trades at 1-to-1. I mean, there is some fluctuations. It's not it's not like ultra liquid. And what happens is because a lot of it's tucked away in all these little things, it always does go back 1-to-1, but sometimes it takes time for the ARB bots to make all these trades and get it back. And I will mention, a long time ago, when PulseChain first came out, I was right away on top of this, and I bought a bunch of pWeth, and this was before pWeth was out, and I actually pushed the price against myself. So if you think you're gonna buy $1,000 worth of this stuff in one transaction, you will hurt yourself, you will lose. So just as a warning, you wanna do this slowly. If you're gonna do it now, pWeth exists, so don't do what I did, don't push the price against yourself, but you just pick some up slowly here and there, and then you add it. Now, what made this powerful is, adding it to V2 PulseX is fine, and you will get fees, and it will be profitable no matter what. But 9mm came around, and you could concentrate that liquidity, around the break-even mark. And when you're looking at these charts and deciding when you're going to do it, remember, you want to go up at the top of that chart and view it not in the US dollar amount, because the chart will be, going with the USD. You want to do pWeth versus wrapped pulse chart, and then you'll see it pretty much floats around 1, and sometimes it spikes up and down as people, dump it for whatever reason or buy it, and then the ARB bots immediately level it out again. So this is pretty much a real infinite money glitch in PulseChain. And it's not really a glitch or something nefarious. You're not doing anything wrong. What will happen though is, as more and more people do this, it'll be like what I experienced on the XDAI chain. Is there'll be so much liquidity, your slice that you're getting of the fees will become less and less and less with every person who does this. But yeah, I got a nice position in 9mm there that I'm using, and instead of just having Pulse sit empty in my wallet, I'm collecting fees on the Pulse. And again, they're not astronomical, but it's better than pairing Pulse with some other asset that is changing, because if you believe, like I do, that the PulseChain asset's going to increase in value, you don't want to pair it or trade it against something else. This way, it's literally like a bank account, a savings account for PulseChain by having it in one of those LPs. You will have to spend some on your fees in and out, but if you put in an amount that's high enough, like $20 or something on either side of that equation, you will earn all your fees back and you will be ahead. So it's, a great way to play this. Anyways, don't do anything crazy, and always do your own research. See you guys.